Hi, this is Billie Jean King.
This is Marion Bartoli.
This is Bianca Andreescu.
I'm Mats Wilander.
This is Mary Carrillo.
This is Pam Shriver.
This is Yannick Noah, and you're listening to the Tennis Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Tennis Podcast on day 12 of Roland Garros. We come to you today from the glamour of the Media Cafe, mostly because it is absolutely chucking it down outside and our usual spot is extremely outdoor. So here we are, myself, Catherine Whittaker, David Law, Matt Roberts, plus for one night only, the Athletics' one and only Charlie Eccleshare. Charlie, I'm sure what you wanted was more time in the Media Canteen. This fortnight, you're welcome.
It's a gorgeous spot.
Yes, I think the most French thing about this tournament is the fact that the Media Canteen has a maitre d'. Absolutely pointless.
So few. I think that's so futile. It's nice, like, thanks, but you don't need to do that. Just
thanks, but could you serve something other than turkey? Yeah. Great to be here, though. Great to not be outside exposed to the elements, because it's been absolutely grim today. A day on which our women's final has been set. It will be the tournament's top two seeds meeting for an 11th time, Aryna Sabalenka and Coco Gauff, courtesy of Coco Gauff's two-set win over Lois Boisson 6-1, 6-2, and Aryna Sabalenka's three-set win 7-6, 4-6, 6-love over the four-time former champion Iga Swiatek. And it is there that we will start. I think my first question for you all, and I've been trying to come up with the answer to this all afternoon and I haven't yet. Was this a good match?
It was fine. It was fine, yeah. It was, I mean, you know, it was competitive for two sets and it went to three, which means that it was fine. And they both played well, mostly separately. And I thought the first set I thought was really scrappy and loads of breaks of serve. Not that surprising. I thought Swiatek became very good in the second set, and then Sabalenka became excellent in the third, and Swiatek kind of didn't. So no, it wasn't a classic by any means.
Yeah, I agree with you. It definitely wasn't a bad match, but relative to expectation levels, it didn't live up to them as a contest, right?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I thought the end of the first set was good. That was when they were both playing at a reasonable level. I think there weren't back-to-back holds until 5-4 and 5-all in the first set, which kind of tells a story, I think, because it was so up and down. And then the second set started slowly, and then towards I think the end of it, I think Iga had to raise her level, and that was interesting and good to watch because, you know, A, we haven't often seen her pushed here, and B, often when she has been pushed, she's kind of wilted. So I thought it was good seeing her rise to the challenge. I mean, it's funny because if it had been a sort of tight two-setter, that might have been better in some ways. The fact that it ended like it did, because it would have been hard to imagine. Once it got to one set, it felt like, right, game on. This is what the third set, everyone wanted from this match. And then the third set being so disappointing.
Yeah, Matt and I were talking about this earlier, and I came away from the match just feeling so shocked by how that third set played out. As you said, I think I think all of us at the start of that third set thought, right, we'll settle in here, we'll refuel, we'll re-snack. David decided to go and stretch his legs. By the time he got back, the match was over. And
only went for 10 minutes.
He does have long legs.
Nobody was expecting that third set to go how it did, Aryna Sabalenka included. You know, I asked her whether, you know, as well as she played in that third set, were you shocked by the lack of resistance coming at you from Swiatek? And she said, yes, I found that set shocking. But Matt, you and I were discussing earlier, like, maybe, zooming out, it was actually the second set that was the shock and not the third.
Because I really think there was a world today in which Sabalenka won this match easily. She started the match with such a clear game plan, rushing Swiatek, getting the first strike in, keeping the rally short. And Swiatek couldn't really cope with the power of the strike coming at her. It wasn't necessarily winners, but it was just deep and hard, and she immediately went up a double break, didn't she, Sabalenka? And we then saw that tennis again in the final set. What happened in the middle was Swiatek initially made an adjustment, started stepping further back like she had done against Rybakina, tried to extend a lot of the rallies, and there was this very clear pattern established in the match early on that if the rallies were short, Sabalenka was winning them. If the rallies were extended at all, Swiatek was generally coming out on top. But the problem was Swiatek could not create those rallies to begin with on her serve. Sabalenka was just killing her serve. Swiatek's first serve percentage was really low, her second serve was being punished. So this pattern developed, but Swiatek managed to counter it for a while by giving herself a bit more time. Sabalenka's own first serve percentage fell off, which meant it was easier for Swiatek to extend the rallies on Sabalenka's serve. So I found the first set really compelling, even if it wasn't their highest quality. I was really into that tactical battle that was going on, and that just obvious battleground in the match, and seeing two players trying to figure it out. But given what we saw in the third set, and given how good Sabalenka was at the start, I have to think that there was a world today in which Sabalenka did win that match more convincingly. As I said, Swiatek did well to adjust. In the second set she got the early break, and then they both held. But yeah, looking back, there was a lot of the match where Sabalenka was really the one on top here, and Swiatek I think did well to push it to 3, but then totally fell off in that final set, and Sabalenka ended up winning 19 of the last 21 points. It was as one-sided a final set as I can remember between two sort of top players. So it was definitely a really, really odd match, one that I did enjoy in the moment, in the first set in particular, but I definitely won't be remembering it as a classic, even if it felt like a big occasion today with them coming up against each other.
Yeah, I thought in the first set Sabalenka looked like she was too eager to just get the quick kill, and it was like she was quite panicked that she hadn't, because she'd made that great start, and I think she was playing like I want to make a statement, and I want to get into an unassailable lead quickly. And then she got reeled in and she got really frustrated. I think she actually did really well to win that tiebreak, because she'd been ahead so many times. She'd had the double break lead and then broken again to serve for it, and then went ahead in the tiebreak.
And there was one of those sort of moments you get now in football with VAR where you think the score is something, and then then you realise later that actually no, it was never 2-2 in this match. It's ended up 2-1 to the other team. Like, she thought she'd gone up 5-1 when she hit a serve
ace out wide, wasn't it?
Out wide, and then it was called a let very, very late. And so it looked like she was up 5-1 in this, but actually she didn't have to replay that point. She lost that game, and suddenly, moments later, it was 4-4. It was like, how did we get here? It was 5-1 Sabalenka a minute ago. Like, the momentum shifted so quickly in that first set. And I agree, I think the tactics were working to begin with, of rushing Swiatek, but as soon as she slightly lost her game, she just kept doing it, and then it sort of slightly got away from her.
Charlie, you've done very well not to take the VAR bait there. we could have been driven down a cul-de-sac so easily.
Charlie. That's an hour gone.
It's just Kevin Friend. Okay. That second set transition into third set from Iga Swiatek, I'm still trying to make sense of it in my mind, and I tried to sort of very delicately ask her about it in press, and because she talked about, in her own words, a loss of intensity in the third set, and I asked her, do you mean physically, do you mean kind of mentally, emotionally you weren't as present, and she started talking about fighting back from that double breakdown in the first set, being 4-1 down. Sort of, I suppose mentally she might have thought she was 5-1 down because of the VAR of it all, and I felt like what she was saying was, having done that in the first set, I didn't have it in the tank to do again. Like, Sabalenka made such a good start in that third set, and Sabalenka said, I felt like the second game of that set was crucial when she took the 2-love lead, and once Iga Swiatek was faced with a mountain to climb again, she just didn't have the will to climb it. I'm not questioning her effort at all. I think she put out there absolutely everything she had in her tank of will. I just don't think that tank is as deep as it has been in the past.
Well, I agree, but I also think that Iga Swiatek at her best is not in that position here. And I mean, to tail away like that is much more in keeping with what we've seen this year in the spring. You know, she has lost several sets, 6-1 or 6-love. When has she ever done that before? It just hasn't happened. Not in recent years when she's been winning this tournament. And I dare say it has kind of drained her the last couple of months. Not only the search for form, but the questions about the form and the doubts. And so she's probably quite mentally tired. But I think the performance today felt to me like a success in that she got as close as she did, because she was so far away a month ago. And you know, she got to a kind of decent impersonation of herself, but it has never felt like the real her, like the title winning her of recent years.
And I do wonder on the Sabalenka side of that, the fact that she'd come back the fact that Swiatek had come back in the first set, could she then do it again in the third? I felt a little bit in that first set that Sabalenka was, in kind of other sporting parlance, playing the badge a little bit. I think she was respecting Swiatek a lot, and she was saying, no, this is an amazing player, I've got to go for so much, I'm tense, I'm agitated. I think if she'd been against most other players, she would have had more confidence to be like, I'm probably going to get through this set eventually. She was tense and she was tight, I thought. Then I think by the third set, maybe some of the kind of illusion is too strong a word, but the aura had gone. I think by that point she was kind of like, no, I'm just quite a lot better than this player. And that sounds harsh, but she kind of just is at the moment.
Yeah, and there was that line from Sabalenka in press. I mean, she's just saying it all, isn't she? She's not holding back with what she tells us and how good she thinks she is and how much better she thinks she is than the rest of the world, because she's got the rankings to back that up, right? She basically said, I can read her serve. She said, I knew where it was going. It was a total diss to the Swiatek serve. But again, the stats of that match back up that claim big time.
Totally. And you know, the stats and also the eye test. You know, just watch that final set, and Sabalenka was leaning on returns and either hitting clean winners or rushing Swiatek so she couldn't get it back. And she said, we've played a lot of times and I know where that serve's going to go. And I do think, you know, we talked a lot about Swiatek in terms of her, you know, sort of mental state on court and her confidence, but in terms of just the actual game, if you just look at the game, the serve I definitely think is an area which I can't quite tell whether it's declined. I think it probably has. It certainly hasn't improved, and it is quite a predictable second serve, and there are a lot of players out there that can attack it and exploit it. And in the past, when all the rest of Swiatek's game's been so good, she's been able to cover it. But there was a lot of times today where we saw what David's often pointing out in terms of like that movement being a little bit stuck after the serve, and she's not covering the court as well as she used to, and it all sort of goes together. But the serve is absolutely a key weakness, I would say, for Iga Swiatek, and it was good in the second set. That's the thing. It really was. She really did serve well in that second set. So it's not like she's totally incapable, but Sabalenka just exploited it in the first set and in the third set massively.
I also think a tell for her confidence levels is the lack of use of the forehand for the first set.
That was bizarre.
The number of times she would have a central position on the court and she would choose to move to her right to hit a very, very good inside-out backhand.
She was doing on some returns
as
well.
Yeah, she's got a wonderful backhand. I always remember years ago when we were all remarking on her forehand, she would say, I would put my backhand as one of my three main strengths.
I put my backhand on Matt's list, thank you very much.
But then as the match went on, I think it was the 48-minute mark is the first time she went ahead in the score at all. And suddenly you realise actually the footsteps are going the other way, and now she's starting, because you could create angles with that forehand with the rotations of it, but it took such a long time for her to bring it in.
And she was never ahead again.
Yeah, that reluctance on the forehand, that has been a theme of the tournament, even in the matches where she's looked great. I remember Pam picking that out from her impressions of Swiatek's first round match against Rebecca Stramkova, where she was awesome. I thought, you know, we were that was the first point in this tournament at which we really kind of revised our expectations of Iga Swiatek and felt slightly reassured that Roland Garros Iga Swiatek was showing up. But there were still those telltale signs of lack of confidence in the forehand. She was electing to hit backhands where Swiatek of old wouldn't have done.
And just on the serve, she won 53% of first serve points, basically winning half her first serve points. So that's not going to get it done. And what kept happening, she barely finished her motion and the ball's down at her feet, and that was happening as well against Rybakina. And it actually happened a few times to Sabalenka as well. When they kept getting broken, when both of them were getting broken, it kept happening to the pair of them. But that continually happened to Swiatek. She just couldn't sort her feet out, and her footwork obviously has been her calling card here.
You asked Swiatek, Charlie, in press afterwards, kind of what are her plans now? Do you have any thoughts of taking a break, even a short one ahead of the grass? And she said, yeah, I'll take a couple of days. But there was quite a troubling line about saying,
she didn't want to go home.
Yeah. I don't feel the need to be at home right now. And then she talked about doing a really proper pre-season on grass, and that on one hand that's great. Like I loved the idea of Iga Swiatek feeling like, no, I want to tackle the grass. I don't want to be one of those clay courters that says grass is for cows. Like, I want to do this one day. I love that from her, but I also I see somebody burnt out. I see a victim of the hamster wheel of tennis, and I found those words quite alarming.
Yeah, the bit about not feeling the need to go home was quite alarming. And I was also thinking, timings wise, obviously getting to the semi-final is good in some ways. It gives her a little bit of belief, but timings wise it's kind of the worst of both worlds, because she's not winning the tournament, but she's basically out here for the normal amount of time. It's not like she's gone out early and you can say, well, maybe it's a blessing in disguise, she can have time off, or she can have extra time on the grass. She's basically been here as long as she always is, so it's not like she can have, even if she says she wants to have a decent grass pre-season, there's not loads of time to do that.
In terms of Sabalenka, Matt, you arrived just towards the end of the answer to the first question in that press conference. You said, I missed the question, but she was talking about winning the title. And that kind of tells you everything, doesn't it? Like, the first question was about what would it mean to you if you won it here? What would it mean to you and your team? And most players in that position, having just won their semi-final, would say, I don't want to think about or talk about that right now. There is work to do. I'm just focusing on the match, the opponent in front of me. I'll talk about that when it happens. Not Aryna Sabalenka.
and in fairness, she's been doing it since her pre-tournament press conference, when she was asked about, you've not reached a final here. Would reaching a final be progress for you? And she said, no. Like, I'm all about winning. And I love how upfront and honest she is about that. And it comes across on the court as well, doesn't it? Like, it's the same energy in the press conference room and on the court.
But I don't know if you share this impression, Charlie. I think this is the first time she's brought that court energy and TikTok energy to the press conference room. Consistently, anyway.
I think it's a bit this. Not when she straight away got world number one, but I think this year, and she started to feel more established. Like, and as we've talked about before, she just loves the status of being the world number one. But I mean, obviously this is a second language thing, I'm sure, but her actual words are, well, it's going to mean everything to me and my team. There's no conditional. There's not it would. It is going to mean everything to me when it happens. And actually, because I asked her about it, because I was asking in the context of, like, it'll be your first non-hardcourt slam, which I do think is a big thing for her, just to kind of rubber stamp the fact that she is this all-court player. I mean, we know this already. Her consistency at the slams is unreal. I'm talking about semi-final appearances and that sort of thing. Something like 11 out of 12, her last 12 slams, or 10 out of 11, something like that. It's crazy. But she hasn't actually won one away from the hardcourt. So I think this is a really big deal, and it is a credit to her that she has really changed her game. We're talking about how Swiatek can look one-dimensional, one-paced. Where have the drop shots gone? Where's the touch gone? She employed a little bit of that today in the second set, and it made a big difference. But Sabalenka has added the drop shot. She plays with more touch and more feel, and I think to win a French Open would be the kind of ultimate endorsement of that.
And it was quite interesting how in response to your question, she said, actually, that's for the grass.
Yeah,
Which was kind of a real, like, sort of warning sign for the rest of the tour, because I still don't think we've seen the best Sabalenka at Wimbledon. You know, one year she was banned, last year she was injured.
Well, how crazy is it to think her last match at Wimbledon was a semi-final defeat to Ons Jabeur? That just feels like a lifetime ago for so many reasons. But, like, I feel she's such a different player to then.
Yeah, so she sort of shouted out her physicality improving and her spin, didn't she, in terms of, like, stuff that's specifically been for the clay. She shouted out her variety and her touch for the grass. But, like, the thing is, it's all helpful on every surface, and it's just made her a better player, which has made her be able to dominate more, which has, I think, built up her aura on the tour. Like, it all feeds in to just creating someone who is just far and away the world number one right now.
I mean, her drop shots won her the first set against Jessica Pegula in the US Open. That was a really tight first set, and Pegula had got it back, a bit like today, actually, similar kind of pattern, and it felt like it was on a bit of a knife edge, and she drop shotted her way through those closing stages, and then that was the match.
I can't wait for Sabalenka to rock up at Wimbledon, drop shotting left, right, and centre. I back her to do it as well. Yeah, incredible. Look, we will do a little throw forward to the final in part 2. First of all, though, we need to talk about who she's going to play in that final and how she reached that semi-final. Just finally on Iga Swiatek, you talked about aura there in relation to Aryna Sabalenka. All the aura that she has is aura that Swiatek doesn't have now. She's going to drop to 7 in the world, and that feels like where she is in the world. She hasn't reached a final now for a year, and once the aura goes, it's hard to get it back.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how she reacts to that, because at times, unlike Sabalenka, she's worn the mantle of world number one quite heavily, and it's been a strain for her. Other times, I think she's just been a runaway train and she's just destroyed everybody like she has here for the last 3 years. I wonder whether maybe going down in the rankings might just make her feel like, I can be a little bit under the radar for a bit, maybe.
She was asked exactly that in her press conference, wasn't she? Like, is it now a totally different mindset that you can kind of just officially put to bed the period of being the chased, and now you're no longer a reigning Grand Slam champion anywhere, or reigning champion anywhere. You can now fully embrace being the chaser. And she was like, I already did that.
Yeah.
I did that after Rome.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know. I'm sure she's trying to do whatever she can, whatever psychological tricks one does to help. But I don't think she's going to go that much more under the radar for a little while, because I think it will still be a story for us in the media that, how's this player who has won 5 Grand Slams doing? Like, we're still going to care a lot about her, and that story's only going to get more interesting in a way the lower she drops. I mean, it already feels like a novelty, her being having a 7 after her name. That's going to feel crazy. I mean, where did she? Can you remember, Matt? Because she was unseeded when she won the 2020 French Open, wasn't she? But she must have got a pretty big boost then. But, like, when was she last this lowly ranked? It's a long time.
I mean, she is still, I think, going to be 3 or 4 in the race after this tournament. Like,
all right, Rafa.
I just mean, like, to me, you said 7 feels about right. It doesn't feel right to me. Like, I wouldn't say that there are 6 better players than Iga Swiatek right now, personally.
Are there 6 more likely players to win a tennis match, though?
I think there are maybe more likely to win a title. Like, that's the difference. Like, she's winning a lot of matches.
Yeah,
she's getting to the latter
every
stages.
Quarter and semi, basically. Every
right.
tournament,
Like, the only early loss she's had all year is Danielle Collins. But it's the latter stages where she used to be so good. We used to talk about her incredible finals record. And that edge against the best players has really, really gone. It's kind of a sad sort of feeling, right? Like, Iga Swiatek's lost at Roland Garros, this incredible streak that she built up. If you'd said a year ago, throw it forward a year and Iga Swiatek would lose, I would have thought then it would feel like this massive shock. Yeah. And it's kind of sad that it doesn't feel like that much of a shock. Like, I think we all we all expected this loss to come at some point. I mean, I definitely during the Rybakina match started thinking, okay, this title run could be on here. That was a really impressive turnaround in that match. But coming in this morning, I did think Sabalenka was going to win, and having that feeling at Roland Garros, she wasn't the favourite with the betting odds. It's just an accumulation of everything that's happened in the last year, and for it feels very definitive with this Roland Garros streak being over. It's like, okay, we're in a totally new situation now with Iga Swiatek, and she's got to adapt to that as well.
It reminds me of when Rafa lost here in 2015, and it was this that felt to me like watching a parent or something who could no longer do what they used to. It was on it like it was so sad, because it was like and again, because it was like, okay, it's one thing Rafa losing, but for him to lose as limply as he did on that day to Novak, and I know what you mean today. It was that same kind of, this wasn't a kind of epic, even like, this wasn't Naomi Osaka last year and a player, it felt like this, wow, it's like amazing occasion. This was a 70-80% Aryna Sabalenka probably. It wasn't like as we've said, this wasn't like a vintage display from her. She didn't have to be, and then when she needed to, she stepped up. And it's so hard, like tennis is as a sport, because it's always knockouts and a player goes out. It's not like, if a player wins a tournament, they win a tournament, and you say they won it, they deserve to win it. So when someone goes out, it's hard not to think, well, will they ever get back to their level? And so I don't want to sort of have a alarmist reaction to this, but it just is hard at the moment, because it's been so long now that we've had this full cycle of a whole season without her winning anything.
She'll win this title again, right?
Yeah, you'd have to say so. Like, yeah, she's so young.
Will she get to number one again?
Could do. I still think that she doesn't look the same on the other surfaces to me. She's won that one US Open, and that's great. And she has one of the titles.
And a lot of hardcourt 1000 titles.
A lot of hardcourt. But I mean, she's not come close in Australia, really. And I kind of think she should do. I think Australia should suit her on many levels. She's not come close at Wimbledon. I've often felt she's looked burnt out after Roland Garros, but also it's a big adaptation of the game there. So I don't know. I think shifting Sabalenka from that world number one spot, given how much she loves it, is going to take some doing.
I do just, wonder if in the fullness of time we'll look back on this 12-month period for Swiatek and the failure at the Olympics. I say that because that's how she perceives it. She got an Olympic bronze medal, and that's incredible. And as we said at the time, the bounce back from the heartbreak of losing to Zheng to still win that bronze medal match, I think, is an underestimated achievement. But in her eyes, that was a failure. That, and then hot on the heels of that, in her experience, obviously we found out about it later, the testing positive and the provisional suspension. Those are the sorts of things in tandem, particularly the second one, that can derail a career. We don't know if that will end up being the case at this point, and I do, in 3 years' time, there's going to be the opportunity to lay Olympic ghosts to rest, aren't they? But it won't be at Roland Garros.
And if not derail a career, certainly cause one almighty letdown when you've been on a run of success, and the pressure that brings. Those things all coming together totally makes sense. That might then lead to a year where you're off it. But the thing is, it does just change so quickly. I mean, using that Nadal example where he looked completely gone, well, then a couple of years later he's winning the final here, absolutely destroying Wawrinka, and you're thinking, how did we ever doubt him? Like, how stupid were we? And there's every chance that in a year or two we're sat here and Swiatek's winning another title and we think the same thing.
So true. Yeah, so true. Right, we will call it a part one, but we'll be back in part two to talk about Coco Gauff's win over Lois Boisson and look ahead to the women's final and the two men's semi-finals that we've got coming up tomorrow. Just before we do that, friends, as you know, we love all the Grand Slams equally, but we always say our favourite slam is the one that we're at. Perhaps not right now because it is pouring with rain in Paris. Thank you very much, Paris. But that never happens in Melbourne in January, does it? We love Melbourne in January. And next year's Australian Open is going to be extra special because, folks, don't look so confused, David. You know this. It's the first stop of Steve Fogel's 50th year celebration tour.
Oh, yeah.
Well, David, if you'd like to celebrate this, and I sense that you would, Steve Fogel's are offering a 5% discount to listeners on all available 2026 AO travel packages. That's ticket packages, hospitality packages. You can even upgrade to a VIP tour of parts of Australia. Loads of different experiences and packages available. I suggest you check them out if that takes your fancy. tours4tennis.com/podcast. That's tours, the number 4tennis.com/podcast. The code to unlock the discount is podcast, PODCAST, and that is valid through until June the 30th, 2025. See you in Melbourne. Welcome back to part 2 of the tennis podcast, where we turn our attention now to Coco Gauff reaching a second Roland Garros final, courtesy of a 6-1, 6-2 defeat of Lois Boisson. The run has come to an end in not quite the fashion, I don't think, that the French crowd here quite had in mind. David, you commentated on this match briefly.
Yes.
Talk us through it.
Yeah, I only did the first set, but I watched the second as well from the back of the commentary box. And look, I don't even think Lois Boisson played that badly. I mean, she lost 6-1, 6-2, but she actually hit some really good shots. Some of them were blunted by the movement and the ability of Coco Gauff generally. I think she was tired. She looked tired. She looked like it had caught up with her. I felt she was very down on herself, Lois Boisson, when things didn't go well. The crowd, you could sense they were just desperate for something to just get their teeth into because they were ready to go. But honestly, I've got to give huge credit to Coco Gauff today. That is the best I've seen her. I know she was playing a player ranked 361 in the world, but that is not a player who's been playing like that. But even against players like that, Coco Gauff's forehand can look ropey. It did not look ropey today. She was hitting the living daylights out of that thing, and it was going in the corners, it was going securely. I was commentating on it with Greg Rosetsky for BBC Radio. He made the point that he felt that it was easier for her to get the contact right on it because of how much topspin Boisson puts on the ball, and therefore she was constantly hitting it shoulder height, and he says that favours her topspin grip sort of thing. And the problem is when it's low down against a Madison Keys, for instance, it's much more difficult for her to do that. That may be the explanation, but even so, there was just a conviction about Coco Gauff today, and she sort of strode onto that court, and you're thinking, hold on, you're not even older than this player, and you look so much more experienced. I mean, obviously she is, and it really told.
Nate laid another bit of Charlie Eccleshare bait there with the Greg Rosetsky reference. Big guy.
Greg's biggest fan, famously.
Yeah.
Thank you for the US Open 97. I'll never forget it.
You watched this one, Charlie?
I saw the second set. I mean, it felt that this tends to be how this kind of run ends. Recalling another British player, Kyle Edmund, at the 2018 Australian Open. Do you remember that? He lost to Marin Cilic in a dreadful match. But again, it had been this kind of crazy run, and I remember then everyone was quite excited, and it's the point at which everyone's kind of jumped on the bandwagon, and then it's like, oh.
That's why Emma Raducanu was so extraordinary.
Exactly. Well, it was like that is the exception to that rule, because you were just waiting for this equivalent to come. But I think Gauff did extremely well, because we've seen Pegula and Andrea kind of lose their minds in varying ways against this player. And I was before the match, I was talking about Matt Futterman, and we were saying Gauff goes into this match with nothing to gain, really, and everything to lose. This would be such a humiliation for her in the way it was for Boisson's previous two opponents. She was just super professional, no messing around, took the crowd out of the equation, and it just felt done pretty early.
Vicky said about Coco Gauff in this match, Vicky Spreadbury, the incredible Vicky Spreadbury that we work with, she said that Coco Gauff wore her status and skill like a crown in this match, and I thought that really summed it up. And look, David, you watched this more closely than I did, but every time I paid attention to this match, Matt and I were downstairs going to press conferences from the first match, and I just thought Boisson looked absolutely exhausted. I do think the back-to-back days thing kind of screwed over any chance that she might have had in this match.
And you can only imagine what her practice session would have been like today.
Jannik Sinner unavailable.
And suddenly she would get out of a car and she's going to be of interest to eyes everywhere, and it's wonderful. It's wonderful. She's just sort of quadrupled her career prize money in a couple of weeks. It's incredible. All this is great. She's going to be entering all these other tournaments, but in the moment it is a lot, and she's handled it incredibly well. And I'm not sure she makes much impact against Gauff if Gauff's playing like that, no matter what she does. But you could tell it was weighing on her today.
Will she get a Wimbledon wild card?
I think so.
Yeah?
I think so.
But if the roles were reversed, the equivalent British player would not get a French Open wild card.
I'm just thinking, is there a world in which Harriet Dart doesn't get one and they give it to Lois Boisson instead?
A delicious world there is, Charlie.
That would be unbelievable. I mean, like, honestly, one of the greatest developments of this year.
You really feel confidently she will get a Wimbledon wildcard? Their policy, I believe, is to not promote someone up 2 rungs. So currently, I don't think her ranking gets her into qualifying, does it? Because the cutoff was done before the French Open.
If you go by that
I think they will give her a qualifying wildcard. Whether they would give her a main draw wildcard, I don't. It's
tricky, I guess, because they're so far down that path already.
Maybe a little quid pro quo.
Yeah.
A little Kyle Edmund wildcard at the French Open next year, or a Harriet Dart one.
That would be amazing.
Or get them to play a match for the wild card. A grudge match, sort of. A ladder match.
Winner takes all.
It strikes me kind of on the basis of a lot of what Coco Gauff had to say in her press conference not that long ago, that we're going to have 2 finalists here going into Saturday's final with 2 completely different psychological approaches. Like, Coco Gauff talked incredibly, actually, an hour or so ago about her experience of her first Roland Garros final here, which was her first Grand Slam final. She said, I was so nervous, I had written myself off before I even played that match. Which sounds so un-Coco Gauff, doesn't it? But, that was 3 years ago. She's incredibly young. Like, she's grown so much and had so much life experience in that time. But she talked about what she learned from that and how transformative it was for her to go through that experience of losing and then just being in Paris the next day and realising nobody cares, nobody is even recognising me on the streets of Paris. She said the sun still rose the next day, and she talked about how the big moments in how big the moment seems in our lives and is not how big they are in the grand scheme of things. And I was thinking in that moment that Sabalenka will be going into this final trying to convince herself that the sun won't rise the next day if she doesn't win, and Coco Gauff will be reminding herself at every possible opportunity that it will.
Yeah, Sabalenka's approach of how much it seems to frustrate her. Every match she plays, pretty much, well, a lot of them follow a similar pattern where she'll get a lead early on in the first set, but then she will have a bit of a dip often, and she'll just be furious at herself. And you kind of think that goes against most of what you're taught when you're learning tennis as a kid or whatever. It's like, don't be too hard on yourself, that's not going to help. But with her, it does sort of seem to work, this policy of kind of self-flagellation and just how much pressure she puts on herself. She kind of then does live up to the ridiculous standards that she sets.
except the kind of one shining example of when it didn't work was in the US Open final 2023.
Yeah, and I think the big difference here is the crowd. Like, that was a raucous crowd inside Arthur Ashe Stadium, and I'm pretty sure it got to Sabalenka. At that point in her career, she'd had a lot of late stage losses at the US Open, and it felt like the just sort of energy inside that Arthur Ashe Stadium, which is chaotic and loud and noisy, just didn't really.
Like Andrea the other day, it felt like that. It was just running away from her.
Yeah, exactly. But having said that, Gauff definitely has an ability to just generally frustrate Aryna Sabalenka. They have I think a perfectly even head-to-head, right? 5-all, 1-all on clay.
It's 5-all.
And the way Gauff uses her legs in that matchup is astonishing. To be able to chase down Sabalenka's shots, make her hit one extra ball repeatedly. There was that match they played in, was it Beijing last year, where actually Coco Gauff really really took it to Aryna Sabalenka and outplayed her to begin with, but then it was the double faults that cost her that day. And if there's one element of today's performance that would be a small worry to me for Gauff, her first serve percentage in that first set today was in the 30s. That is not going to get it done against Aryna Sabalenka. She upped it through the match and she improved in the second set, but I think she has to come out and protect that serve, because she can break Sabalenka's serve. I've no real doubt about that, but she's got to be able to protect her own, and serving in the 30% first serve is not going to do that. So there's definitely bits of this matchup where I do think Gauff can get to Sabalenka, but it feels on Sabalenka's racket, and
like every tennis match,
match, and that comes with an enormous amount of pressure when the match is on your racket. That's what I remember from that US Open final. It's like she needed to actually rein it in a bit, Sabalenka, and probably use some of the variety that she's got in her game a lot more now. But she just kept going for it, and the unforced errors piled up, and she almost needed to say to Gauff,
all right, you go and win it.
Yeah. Put this on your racket.
But that's the trap that Coco Gauff lays for opponents, isn't it? I always think, and Madison Keys pretty much explained this for us a couple of days ago, didn't she? Winners' stats have different parameters in a Coco Gauff match, because it might look like, let's say the stats are you've hit 5 winners, whereas actually you've hit 15 winners, they're just not winners against Coco Gauff. She did that to Madison Keys the other day, and then that gets in your head because your shots have to be that bit better to get them out of the Coco Gauff retrieval range, then you go for too much. She scrambles people's eggs, and I do think that, as good as she was today, I don't think she will want this final to be a lovely, clean tennis match. I think she wants to drag Sabalenka into the gutter.
Yeah, and Sabalenka's not going to be, she is not someone, as I was saying before, who's going to be kind enough on herself to say, okay, well, I have made that error, but that's because Coco's defense is amazing and she's drawn that out of me. No, she will be saying, why have I missed that forehand? I should not be missing that forehand. So there definitely is a world in which that frustration that we're talking about kind of boils over into something unhelpful. But it is just the fact that she is the protagonist, Sabalenka, and generally, you're right, Matt, in that US Open final, it didn't help her to be, but generally players want to be, because I think what they will often say is it's more nerve-wracking and makes you more edgy when you're like, this is ultimately out of my control. Whereas every match she plays, I mean, it was so strange the other day when it was kind of put to Sabalenka that maybe Zheng was more powerful than her. The question was something like, what's it like playing someone more powerful? And she was kind of like, sorry, when did that happen?
Yeah.
It was like, she ain't more powerful than me. But yeah,
it does takes it as a personal insult and as a challenge if anybody suggests it.
And it's going to be fascinating, because in my mind, Gauff has been the player who's most going to benefit from Iga Swiatek's drop in form. She's lost to Iga Swiatek here 3 years in a row. She's unbeaten against everyone else at Roland Garros over a long period. She's lost to Iga Swiatek. So now she's facing someone who has beaten Iga Swiatek, and let's be clear, it's helpful for Sabalenka as well. But Gauff doesn't have the innate problems in the matchup against a really good Sabalenka that she has against a really good Swiatek. We've seen it repeatedly that when Swiatek's at her best, she can handle the Coco Gauff game. Sabalenka has obviously got a lot of wins against Coco Gauff, but she's never really beaten her in the way that Iga Swiatek has just handled Coco Gauff. So I kind of think Gauff will relish this match against Sabalenka. I think Gauff will have total belief that she can win this, and that puts us in a great place going into this final, I think.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I think Sabalenka is going to have to play a hell of a match to win this title, because Gauff is now, look, she might go into the final and struggle with the serve. The double faults might happen. The forehand might break down. These are all things that can come along, and I don't think she necessarily knows when they're going to happen. Today, I felt she was great on the forehand, and I tried to put to her in the press conference, how do you strike the balance really between wanting to be aggressive but knowing you've got this amazing core defense game with your movement, etc. And she clearly still wants to be that attacking player, but she also knows she's got this that she can fall back on, and I think that she's going to make it bloody hard. And yeah, I was surprised by Sabalenka's dip today, I didn't think she was that far away from the wheels really coming off there. I thought she did very well to get it back on track, because Swiatek was getting to her and the movement was getting to her and those sort of things. The fact that she can drag her off the court with angles, and Sabalenka can't do that as much. She's more straight line. She wants to go through you. And actually a good Coco Gauff can use angles too.
My worry for Gauff would be the fact that often because Sabalenka, her serve is, it's broken not that infrequently. And a lot of matches she has, there are actually quite a few breaks in the match because she breaks her opponents a lot as well. But if you are to beat her, you look at someone like Madison Keys at the Australian Open, who served her way through that final set, who can kind of capitalise on a dip. Even someone like Clara Towson, I just question Gauff's ability even if Sabalenka does have an off day serving, can Gauff then really capitalise? Can she take advantage of that, or is she going to just chuck in a ropey game herself and then you let Sabalenka back in? I think you've really got to take those chances like Keys did in Melbourne.
It's a fascinating head-to-head. It really is. It's one of those where it's just been totally back and forth ever since their first meeting, which was in 2020. Do you know when it was? Think COVID, David.
It wasn't Lexington, was it?
It was Lexington.
No way!
Nothing says COVID like Lexington.
Do you remember Serena Williams warming up in a car park?
I remember. That's where I discovered Jennifer Brady as well.
Yeah. That's where Victoria Azarenka put in the most awful performance to beat Venus Williams. We were all writing her eulogies, and then she went and reached the US Open final a few weeks later. It was a weird time. Lexington was a weird time. But it was an incredible match between Gauff and Sabalenka. Gauff won that opening meeting 6-4 in the third, and their most recent one in Madrid won by Sabalenka in straight sets, but it was right on the precipice of going to a third, wasn't it? And those are in Sabalenka's dream conditions, and just finally on the conditions. Bad news, folks. It is going to piss with rain right the way through until Sunday, so there's a good chance this final will be under the roof. And, well, I think they both like it under the roof, but Gauff does seem to be thriving. Yeah,
it's well set up for her, and I just wonder whether she can bring out the anxiety in Sabalenka, because you still see it. You still see the stress, the desire to dominate. She wants to dominate. She wants to just be the best all the time. And when it's not going well, she does get irritated by it. But she's also figured out ways to get it back on track so far. And I wonder what the crowd are going to do. I suspect they're going to go with Gauff as the underdog. That would be my guess.
And you could tell it annoyed Sabalenka. There was a moment in the first set where the crowd were singing Iga, and she hit Sabalenka this amazing inside-in forehand winner, and she kind of was asking them, like, yeah, how about some noise for me? Like, she feels that. And just on how even the head-to-head is, just as another thing, their last two matches, one win each,
and
even number of games
this is
as
very
well.
Greg, Charlie.
Well, exactly that. Even games as well, last two matches.
Okay. I could look ahead to this final all day. We'll probably do a bit more of it tomorrow. In fact, we'll definitely do a bit more of it tomorrow. Everybody is allowed to change their minds for another 24 hours.
Oh, good.
That's it for part 2. We'll be back in part 3 to look ahead to tomorrow and talk about a few other bits and bobs that happened today. Welcome back to part 3 of the tennis podcast. We're going to look ahead to the 2 men's singles semi-finals in just a moment. But first, a few other things, big things that happened today at Roland Garros. The mixed doubles final was played. First on Saturday, Sara Errani and Andrea Vavassori beating Taylor Townsend and Evan King 6-2, 6-4. It's their first Roland Garros title together and their second major title after the US Open last year, but they also beat Taylor Townsend in the final. Taylor Townsend and Evan King, by the way, really interesting story, particularly Evan King here. They're a scratch pairing. They're both from the south side of Chicago. They saved match points in the semi-final, and they've already confirmed that they're going to team up at Wimbledon, so that'll be fun. And King is also into the men's doubles semi-final with Christian Harrison. He's 33, is Evan King, and he's just broken into the world's top 20 for the first time. He made his Grand Slam mixed doubles debut at the US Open in 2016, lost in round 1, and he's had to wait 9 years for his next chance to play a Grand Slam.
Wow. And
he says doubles is all about picking the right partners. Can you confirm, Matt?
Yes, I picked Charlie's tennis editor this morning, James Hansen. We got a little win over Futterman. He also had a partner, Matt Lamwell of the Mail.
Well done, Matt Roberts.
Yeah, and James. All about picking the right partner.
Well done on representing us.
Absolutely.
Looking forward to joining tomorrow.
Yes, Charlie's.
What partner will you pick, Charlie? All about picking the right partner.
That's a good question. I'll mull it over overnight.
I think Briggs might be joining.
Yeah.
If his toilet's fixed. Evan King and Christian Harrison will play Neil Skubsky and Joe Salisbury tomorrow in their semi-final. That for the chance to play Marcel Granollers and Horacio Zeballos, who were already into the final. They won their semi in 3 sets earlier on today. Incidentally, Sara Errani, the mixed doubles champion, crowned earlier today. She's into the women's doubles semi-final with Jasmine Paolini. They will play Mira Andreeva and Dana Schneider tomorrow. Yeah, that's fun, isn't it? Face off between the 2nd and the 4th seeds. And the other women's doubles semi-final is an all-unseeded affair. How's this for some names? Ulrika Ekeri. If that's ringing bells, it's because she's the Norwegian that's called in to make it possible for Casper Ruud to play in the United Cup. She is partnering Eri Hazumi, the Japanese player, and they're taking on Anna Danilina and Alexandra Krunic. Yeah. I
haven't heard the name Alexander Krunic for a long time.
I think we'll call that a one-sided women's doubles draw. But well done, everybody involved. We'll give you a full update on the wheelchair events tomorrow, but there was some huge news in the wheelchair tournament from earlier this week, Matt.
Yes, and I can't believe that you've passed to me for this section, because I definitely cannot say the name Dida de Groot like you can. Our listeners just so disappointed right now. But she lost earlier in the tournament to China's Li Zhaohui, 6-2, 6-4, which, when that result came through, seemed absolutely shocking. De Groot had won the last 15 Grand Slam tournaments that she'd played in. She was on a 52 match winning streak in Grand Slams. her last defeat at a major was Roland Garros in 2020. So all of that just screams absolutely huge upset. And of course it is, but there were some signs that Lee might be able to do this. She actually beat De Groot last year, and De Groot has been injured, hasn't she, since the Paralympic Games?
Yeah, she had a hip surgery after the Paralympics.
So, probably not at her best, but, absolutely Lee a sort of coming force, and she's backed up that win by beating a French woman, Senia Chasteau, in the quarters, so she's now into the semis to play Yui Kamiji. So, sort of just a really interesting developments there in that event.
Yeah, she's snapped Dider de Groot's 145 match winning streak. That was last May in the World Team Cup, and now she's snapped her 52 match Grand Slam winning streak. What a destroyer.
The Burtic of the discipline.
Oh, what a compliment. He's my guy. Right, the order of play for tomorrow here at Roland Garros. It all starts at 2:30 p.m. with Lorenzo Musetti against Carlos Alcaraz. Can anybody make a case for Lorenzo Musetti?
I'd be surprised.
We all look to David to make a ludicrous prediction.
An optimistic one,
sorry,
Charlie.
Yeah. Look, I think it can be a good match. I think Lorenzo Musetti is good enough to make it a good match, and also you still can't confidently say that Carlos Alcaraz on any given day is going to play his best stuff or close to his best stuff. Even short of it, he usually still wins, but he has occasionally not played well in matches like this, and one day he might come unstuck against Musetti, who's probably playing as well as he's ever played.
It reeks of 4 sets for me. That there'll be a kind of I don't think Alcaraz will come out and just be clinical and put him away. I think he'll have a lull, and Musetti will play well for a bit. And Musetti's the kind of guy, like a lot of Alcaraz's opponents do, I think could redline for about a set, and Alcaraz might dip. But yeah, I think he'll get it done in 4.
Yeah, full house, really. I mean, look, it's a very different type of match for Musetti to the ones he's had this tournament, in that, finally the pressure's off. And I know that, there's still a lot on the line for him here. Can reach a first Grand Slam final. It's a massive deal. It's one of the biggest matches of his life. But he's been the clear favourite in all the matches that he's played. And I think there have been times where he's slightly felt that pressure. He's had those second set dips against Rune and Tiafoe. He's got quite frustrated with himself. I hope we see a sort of free Musetti tomorrow, because that, I think, is when he's going to be most dangerous, because I think David really put it really well the other night on the pod about why this is a tricky matchup for him, because he does have to redline if he's going to hurt Alcaraz, because his natural game with the slice backhand and the single-handed backhand from deep, that's probably not going to cut it against Alcaraz. He's going to have to take cuts at the ball. He's going to have to come up with, I think, some sort of genius shots, which he is capable of, but is he capable of doing it over the best of 5 sets? That's kind of where my doubt is. He's taken a set off him this year on the clay. He's pushed him to a tiebreak in Rome. There's definitely signs that he can make this close at times, but unless Alcaraz has a day where he's sort of consistently in and out, I'm finding it hard to see Musetti winning.
You've actually done a reverse hype on me there. I'm now thinking it might be straight sets, and I was maybe generous with 4.
Charlie, the excitement rating says a whopping 100.
Yes, I saw that. Both semis.
In fact, the excitement rating thinks it's all killer, no filler tomorrow. It's just 100 across the board. Because, it's 100 for the second semi-final, which is at 7 p.m, a mini night session.
Yeah, it's going to be empty for 90 minutes because everyone's working.
They can't leave work.
Yeah, it's impossible. Emily's told us. It doesn't work.
So what's going to happen? Can anybody make the case for Novak Djokovic here? And I know I'm going to stop you in your tracks here, David. Don't say he can, I'm asking, will he?
Well, I think he will.
You think he's going to beat Sinner?
Yeah, I do.
Tell me more.
Yeah, I mean, I've still got 24 hours to sort of, change my mind. No, I mean, I do. I don't think he's going to win the tournament, but I think he's going to beat Sinner. I know it sounds crazy, and I've not met anybody else who thinks this, and I know I haven't got the greatest track record at the moment, but I mean, I've got a few right, and I just saw in Djokovic last night somebody who's right where he wants to be. I've seen a Jannik Sinner who hasn't played a big match like this in a while. Obviously, the last one he did play, he won, and he won the final of the Australian Open very handily. The one that he did play similarly to this was the final of Rome, and he got pretty handily beaten by Alcaraz there. I mean, after the first set, which obviously he had a couple of set points. Listen, Sinner over the best of 5 as the fresh young guy who's barely lost games all week and who has beaten Novak Djokovic several times in a row now. He's a heavy favourite, I do get that. But have we not learnt anything about Novak Djokovic when he's in a situation like this, when he's hyper motivated and he's going to play the best young player in the world and he's got a chance to take him out and shut everybody up?
Charlie's nodding,
no,
David.
That is a good hype job. I mean, and an even better hype job was how Djokovic played in the last couple of sets yesterday. I don't think he'll win. I think Sinner will win. But unlike how I felt about Djokovic, incorrectly as it turned out, but when he played Alcaraz at the Australian Open, my feeling, which in a way wasn't contradicted, was if Alcaraz turns up here, Djokovic is losing this match. As it turned out, Alcaraz didn't turn up and his brain got fried and he produced a really terrible performance. I don't think Sinner's going to do that. And so I do still think if Sinner turns up and plays to anything like his best, he should win. But I think how well Djokovic played the other day, offering a reminder of how unbelievable a clay court player he is. He better than Sinner, I would say, actually. And the fact that Sinner's had this ban, he's not been tested, he's not played a long match. I do think there's a world in which it does get physical and Sinner just doesn't have the reps. And we're saying, oh yeah, well of course he's struggling physically. He's barely played in the last 3 months. He hasn't played a 5-setter in a long time. I mean, he had that one in Australia against Holger Rune, but as we've spoken about many times before, long matches are pretty rare for him, or certainly winning them. And you mentioned, you said he had the Australian Open final against Zverev, but I don't think that's on anything like this scale for tension, anxiety. Like, Sinner would not have been feeling tense and anxious before playing Zverev. I mean, he would have because it's a Grand Slam final, but not to the extent I think he will be tomorrow. The equivalent of that most recent exam he had really is Alcaraz here a year ago, and he lost that. So I think he'll win. I do think you've got to go Sinner, but I feel so differently about this match now than I would if at the start of the tournament you'd said Djokovic's going to play Sinner in a semi. I think Djokovic has probably crawled his way there, or he's benefited from an easy draw and he's just going to turn up and Sinner's going to squash it. I don't feel that now, though. The fact that Djokovic hasn't even had a break point the last 2 times he's played Sinner is big. Those are on hard courts, though, and I do think this will be a very different match.
I'd love to see it go long, to see that immovable object, unstoppable force thing here, because...
Or the opposite.
Well, exactly, yeah. Very movable force and a very stoppable object, the other way around. You know what I mean. Because, yeah, they've both got serious question marks over, a 4+ hour match. Djokovic for age-based reasons and the fact that he hasn't played one for a year, and Sinner because he's never won a match over that length, over 4 hours long.
Yeah, it's one of those curious Sinner stats, isn't it? Because it's actually a tremendous positive for him.
It's like the Nishikori 5-set stats, isn't it? Is this good or is this bad?
Yeah, he just never gets pushed that far.
Yeah.
He's just so much better than everyone else that the sample size is still really small. It's not a lot of matches that we're talking about that he's not won from over 4 hours. It's a handful. And so really I think the question is, can Djokovic get it there? And I think there's a chance that he just cannot do the things that he was doing that made him look so good against Zverev. The speed of Sinner's ball will be faster than Zverev's. Sinner's speed of foot will be better. His attacking intent will be more. Like, there's just a chance that Djokovic cannot do those things. But I can't believe anyone is just saying Djokovic has got no chance. Like, underestimate this guy at your peril. Like, Bublik had some success in that second set with drop shots against Sinner. So, you know, I have to think Djokovic will be able to find a way to deploy them as well. Not to the extent he did against Zverev. I'm going Sinner. I am. But I can't, as I said, I can't believe anyone is just writing Novak Djokovic off, because, as Charlie said, the last time we were here, when he played one of these young guys at a slam, he won at the Australian Open against Alcaraz. Sinner's a more reliable proposition than Alcaraz. Don't think Sinner will play like Alcaraz did in Australia, but I'm going Sinner, but like 60-40.
And at this venue, he beat Alcaraz, you know, the most recent, it was at the Olympics, so it wasn't best of 5. I mean, just to put it into context how good Djokovic is here, 2019 was the last time he lost to someone other than Nadal at Roland Garros. Since 2011, the players who've beat him are Thiem, who's basically, you know, beat him twice, one of which Djokovic was all over the place, the other time Thiem played amazingly well. Wawrinka redlined, there was the weird Cecchinato one, and then Nadal. But I mean, he is a world-class clay court player.
And there's a very good Novak Djokovic stat that will be broken tomorrow if he loses, in that he only loses to left-handers and one-handed backhands at the French Open, because on top of that, Meltzer's beaten him here, lefty. Kohlschreiber's got a win over him. Like, so Sinner, righty with a two-handed backhand, it's a done deal.
Shall I just leave you two to nerd out? David and I, we'll go home.
Basically, Musetti's the only guy who's got a chance of beating Djokovic.
Matt Futterman's just invited us for a chocolate mousse, Catherine.
I've just seen it. I've just seen it. Let's do the mascots.
No, I realised Runa was only 4 sets, wasn't it? The Sinner one. In my head, that was a 5-setter because it got tight.
Charlie, we got a chocolate mousse to get to. The corrections.
Enough about Holger Rune.
We've also got a mascot, folks. I always have time for mascots. This one is Shadow. I've definitely got time for this mascot. Shadow is owned by Cynthia Smith. Now, Cynthia's previous dog, Luca, has been a mascot for the podcast before, and Cynthia says we lost Luca in September of last year, and this little guy, Shadow, was born on the same day that Luca died.
Oh, goodness.
Which is incredibly lovely. Shadow is now around 9 months old, but at the time of writing he was only 4 months old and, quote, just learning about tennis. But by then he already loved his tennis ball. He's a super sweet puppy and on track to be a huge golden retriever. I can see that, Cynthia. We hope he can be a mascot for years to come. And on a personal note, Cynthia says, I want to tell you how much I love the tennis podcast. I've been a listener since pre-Matt days, and my family calls you all my tennis buddies. My daughter even went with me to see your live show in London and thought the sense of humour you brought to your remarks was delightful. Thanks for everything you do. Cynthia, that is wonderful, and I think it probably goes without saying that I think your golden retriever puppy is wonderful, and you're welcome to send us pictures of Shadow absolutely anytime. And if you can make it, I'd love it if you could come to our London live show this time around, which is on June the 26th, Thursday, June the 26th at Shoreditch Town Hall. Tickets are still available and the link is in our show notes. Hello to Phoebe, to Maisie and to Roger. Hello to our top folks and executive producers Greg, Chris and Jeff. And let's go to Matt for some shout outs. Don't put your mic down, Charlie. We need all the help we can get here. Come on.
We start with Blair Patterson.
Right,
hello, Blair.
Blair is from Manchester.
Hello, Blair.
Like Blair Henley.
Blair Henley was where my mind went as well, yeah.
Yes.
And like Manchester, where Matt recently saw Bruce Springsteen.
Yes, and where Charlie's dad recently saw Bruce Springsteen.
Very much so.
He was a night 3 guy?
Yes. He was the week after you.
Yeah.
Any tennis Pattersons?
Can't think of any.
No, okay.
There should be.
Well, Blair Henley and Manchester. Do we know anything about Blair?
Blair is the owner of a previous pet mascot, Colin, a fox red Labrador.
I remember Colin, yeah. It's an unusual dog name, Colin. That's why it stands out.
Colin
That is
Beecher.
very good. Lovely stuff. Thank you, Blair.
Next we have Garth Simmons.
Hello, Garth.
Right,
These
Garth.
are tough tennis names.
Very Wayne's World.
That's very good.
Very good.
Garth Crooks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where my mind.
Footballer for Spurs and West Bromwich Albion. Would
Yeah.
you believe?
The Ryan Mason of his day.
I love how perfectly millennial Charlie's references are.
Wayne's World and Garth Crooks.
What do we know about Garth?
Garth was introduced to tennis in the late 70s, and he and his father were both Sampras Agassi fans.
Now we are talking, Garth. Magnificent.
David told us a Pete Sampras under Agassi story on the walk-in this morning that we'd never heard before. Like the cup runneth over.
Can we have it on the walk to get moose?
Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you, Garth.
And finally, we have Ryan Bennett.
Hello,
Harrison.
Ryan. Brother of
Christian
French
Harrison.
Open men's doubles semi-finalist Christian Harrison.
Yeah, I sometimes commentate with Ryan Harrison. Very nice fella. Hello, Ryan.
Ryan is originally from Canada, but
Lovely
has
place.
been living in Sydney for 22 years.
Also a lovely place.
Ryan Bennett sounds like a footballer for Birmingham City from like 20 years ago. I don't know if he actually is or just a kind of approximation in my head.
We're at the stage, Charlie, of the tournament where approximate shout-outs of potentially phantom people. Oh
From
my
Birmingham
God.
City.
Ryan Bennett is a former English professional footballer who played as a centre-back. Stand by, I'm clicking. Signed for Grimsby Town in 2006. Also played for Norwich, Wolves, Leicester and Swansea.
So not Birmingham, so you've let yourself
so
down.
close.
I think we're going to
Wolves.
give Charlie that. No. Cambridge, ended his career at
Sounds like
Cambridge
he should have
United.
gone to Birmingham.
Doesn't say Birmingham.
Yeah.
Doesn't count.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you to all of our friends of the Tennis Podcast. We are proudly part of the Athletic Podcast Network. Charlie, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Let's go get Moose. We'll speak to you tomorrow.